computer. Okay, so I hope you guys all have done the quiz 2. That's about this chapter. And I did post the 2 videos, those short, quick videos, hopefully to help you understand better about the content of chapter 5. And I also have the quiz 1, the bonus work 1, right? So make sure you do those. It's a bonus mark for you, right? And I will talk about the midterm exams that is coming. I believe it's next Tuesday, okay, during our class time. So I will give you more information about that at the end of the class. So today we will start chapter 5, okay? So chapter 5, that's about ABC, okay, ABC, activity-based costing. We have 4 learning objectives. Today, we are going to cover the first 2. The first one is we want to recognize the difference, okay? In chapter 3, we have learned about the job order costing, right? So that's the traditional way of allocating the overhead, right? So basically, we use like labor hour, right, machine hour as the cost driver, right? And we figured out what's the predetermined overhead rate. So that's chapter 3, right? And so we want to understand what's the difference between the traditional costing versus the one we are going to learn, ABC, okay? And we want to understand the nature of ABC. And the second learning objective is that we want to apply the ABC to a manufacturer. We want to use one example to see how we are doing the calculations, we are allocating the overhead under this system, and how is that different from the job order costing system we have learned. Okay, awesome. Oh, we have more people. Okay, thank you, Darlene. And who is this? I can't see the name. So in one of the videos, okay, I gave you a hypothetical scenario, right? Hope you have seen that. Suppose the work is really boring, right? Before you let your workers to start working, you want to cheer them up to make them happy. Okay, so you have 4 programs. They can play some golf, they do some massage, cheering. After all these options, they are happy, and then they're ready to go for work, right? So the idea here is, right, this is all the overhead, right? This is all the overhead cost. So suppose the cost for running these programs, 1 million, 500,000, 100, right? And suppose that the estimated budget level for the activity, like for the golf course, suppose the estimated number of visits is 5,000. For massage, the total amount of hours will be 10,000, right? And maybe there is 1,000 cheering hours, right? So that's basically, both numbers are based on estimation, right? And then you want figured out what's the predetermined overhead, and depending how much resources this person Joe is using, we are going to allocate that much overhead to the job Joe is doing, right? Suppose he's playing golf twice, right? He visited 2 times. So, and maybe he had a 1 hour massage, right? And, so those kind of things will help us to know, okay, how many of the overhead cost should be assigned to this individual employee and for his job, right? So that's kind of the idea. Like I used that video to show you, basically the key difference here. You can see there are 3 different activities here, right? Traditionally, we are only using direct labor machine hours, right? We only use one dimension, but here we are using like 3 different pools to deal with that overhead, right? So for the traditional costing system, we are only using one predetermined rate, right? That's based mostly on the direct labor or machine hours, okay? So that's what we learned in chapter 3 for the job order costing, right? So the whole point is like traditionally, right? Traditionally, the product cost is mainly driven by labor cost or machine cost, right? So therefore, there is a direct, close associations between the usage of the direct labor on the overhead cost. So therefore, they are only using this one activity, the direct labor hours or dollars, as a way to allocate the overhead cost. Okay, this is because traditionally, I will say that again, traditionally, the direct labor might be a significant portion cost of that product or service. Okay. So this is one example. Suppose this is a furniture product, right? You have a chair and a table. You're building 25,000 units chairs and 5,000 units table, right? Maybe 5 chairs for 1 table, right? So in total, the units are 30,000. Suppose for each unit, you need 1 direct labor hour. So 30,000 units, you are going to need 30,000 direct labor hours, right? Assume traditionally we are using only a single predetermined overhead based on direct material labor hours, and we know the overhead cost, total cost is 900,000. So we have learned in chapter 3, the way we do this is we are using the total overhead cost, 900,000, divided by the level of the cost driver, right? So that's the 30,000 direct labor hours. So we are saying that for each labor hour, for each unit, okay, for each labor hour, the cost allocated would be 900 divided by 30 would be $30, okay? And for each unit, you only need 1 hour. So for each unit, you only need 1 times $30, right? For each unit. So here would be the cost. So you have direct materials, direct labor, and overhead. And the cost per chair, the cost per unit, that's 1 direct labor. So, and that's $30 overhead, okay? For both chair and the table, okay? So in this case, you figured it out that the total cost per unit is $82 for the chair and $72 for the table, okay, for the table. And just be aware that the chair and the table, they have the same amount of overhead allocated to it, okay? So that's the tradition, under the traditional costing system. So the question here is, so whatever is tradition, maybe that there is a room maybe for improvement, right? So there's a demand for a new approach. Why? The first thing is the international competition. So you guys probably don't know, but when I was a student, my instructor, he's probably 60, 70 years old now. So he was talking about that the automobile manufacturer competition between North American and the Japanese, okay? So it's quite interesting back in the early, maybe 1950s, 60s, right? That's even before, like 20 years before I was born. The Americans only drive, right? They only drive like Ford, right? All these American brand manufacturers, right? But the Japanese people, they have some new ways to do things, right? They were able to lower the cost of car manufacturing, right? So in the beginning, people just so not take it serious, right? They laugh at the Japanese car, right? So who is going to buy it? Who do they think they are? They want to enter into North American market, right? But it turned out, you know, the international competition, right, is there. It turned out, you know, they are doing really well, right? So they gained more market, and more people are buying the Japanese cars, right? So, and then eventually, these American manufacturers has to go to Japan to learn how they manage their cost. Okay, so that's quite interesting. So the international competitions will be something, right? Is you're facing like a global competition, right? You have to figure out a way to reduce your cost, right? To better manage, control your cost in order to make yourself more competitive. Okay, and so technological innovation, right? Technological innovation. So it's funny. I used to live in Codell, so I have lots of Dutch farmer friends, right? So they have they have the dairy farm, right? They have the dairy farm. So the first generation came from Netherlands, maybe back in 1950s. So at that time, they worked very hard, right? They wake up like 3 o'clock in the morning. They start milking, right? Of course, direct labor, right? Traditional, they just like milking using their hands, right? But nowadays, if you go to visit the dairy farm, right, they have the robots, right? The robots and all the the cows land up, and the cows will get into the stall, and then the robot come, right? They were able to just do the milking, right? So it's quite interesting how technological innovation will change the way how you operate your business, right? And definitely it's going to challenge you to think about how I'm going to deal with the overhead cost, right? Because when direct labor is not a major component cost of your product, so then you have to think about, right, how you're going to allocate. What's the best, most appropriate way to allocate your overhead cost, right? Advances in the computerization and automation, right? So here again, right? So in the first day, you have seen the automation, right? I have shown you guys how the Lego figures, right? The pieces were made, right? On the production line, the assembly line. So all these changes will demand for a new approach in terms of how to allocate that overhead cost more accurately. That's basically the question we are asking, right? It's not like you are able to allocate, then you are done, right? So the idea is, remember, the whole point we are learning this course is really about how can we, as managers, right, as the insiders of the business, better use the informations, right, to make decision, right? That's the ultimate goal. We want to make sound decisions. So with the hindsight, right? Not with hindsight. If you use a traditional costing approach in the modern context, maybe your approach is too rough, right? You can still allocate, but maybe it's less accurate, right? So then there's the need for this new approach, okay? So basically, it is the time to update, right? It's the time to update. There are maybe some other cost drivers, right? Instead of only relying on direct labor or machine hours, okay? So the management need for better quality cost information. So that's leading to the ABC for the overhead allocation, okay? When you compare the two costing system, so traditional costing, they only use one rate, right? They only use one rate, and they based on the volume, okay? But under the ABC, they can have different rates, okay? There are different activities, okay? So in the very beginning, I give you an example, right? So instead of having all the costs as one thing, right, to allocate, they divided them into the three, right? One is the golf, right? The other one is the massage, and then the last one is the cheering, right? So you can see that there are different activities, right? So when you allocate the overhead, traditional costing, you use a single rate, the predetermined overhead rate. But for the ABC, depending on the number of the activities, right? For each activity, you are able to calculate a rate for that, okay? So what is the activity-based costing, okay? So this is basically, is a system to allocate overhead cost, okay? So what is ABC? Basically, it's a way to allocate overhead cost. So what happened, I will explain in the future slides. Before that, we want to first take a look at these terms: activity cost pools, cost drivers, okay? So first, what is activity? So it's any event, action, transaction, or work sequence that causes a cost to be incurred in producing a product or providing a service. What is the cost driver? So any factors or activities have a direct cause-effect relationship with the resources consumed. The cost driver. So this is activity or factors that consumes resources, okay? There is a direct cause and effect relationship, okay, between the cost driver and the cost. And then the activity cost pool. So this is a distinct type of activities where the overhead costs are allocated into. So we call this the activity cost pool, okay? So there are 4 steps, right? In the second video, I sent yesterday on Monday to you guys. I illustrated the 4 steps, okay? So first step, you want to identify what are the pools, what are the activity cost pools, and then you assign the cost to the pools, okay? So in the first video, the 3 activity pools would be playing golf, massage, and the cheering, okay? And the second step is you want to identify the cost driver and the total expected usage, okay? So what is the cost driver for all the cost incurred, overhead cost incurred for the golf cart, right? So that's this what's the cost driver? Basically, we are saying the more people come to the golf cart is going to cost more, right? So we are saying the number of visits. For massage, it's the main cost is the number of the massage hour, and the cheering is the number of the cheering hours, okay? So this would be the cost driver that has a direct, right, cause-effect relationship between the activity and also the resources consumed, right? So that's the cost driver. And then what is the total expected usage, right? You can say, I'm expected that maybe there are like 5,000 visits every year on the golf cart, right? So those are all based on estimation. And step 3, that's a division. So in terms of calculation, it's a division. So you are going to use the cost in this pool, okay, that's the estimation, divided by the total estimated usage, okay? So that would be your predetermined overhead rate for this activity, okay? So you figured out what's the cost per visit, and what's the cost per massage hour, and what's the cost per cheering hours, okay? And step 4, you are going to allocate the overhead cost to the product based on the use of the cost drivers. So each product may use different levels of cost drivers, okay? But here you're going to use multiplication, okay? So suppose Joe, he is working on job number 101. Maybe he just visit one time, right? One visit on the golf cart, maybe 2 hours massage, right? Maybe, half an hour cheering hours, right? For Joe. So then you just use the rate you figured out in step 3 and multiply on the actual usage by this unit. Okay, that's how you allocate the cost from these pools to this product, right? To this product. Maybe Helen, maybe she's working on job 105, right? The whole point here is we have a little bit more precision here. maybe Joe, he just enjoys golf a lot, right? So that's all he did. Maybe he visited 10 times golf court, right? He didn't do any massage or cheering hours. So then, all the overhead costs allocated to Joe should be from the overhead cost of the golf, right? Maybe Helen, the only thing she wants is massage, right? So then I need overhead cost from the golf cart, from the cheering, right? It's irrelevant to her job, right? In terms of allocation. So you just only allocate how many, what's the amount of the massage hours she used, and then you figured out what's the allocated overhead cost, right? So basically, the more complex a product manufacturing operation, the more activities and the job cost drivers likely to be present, right? So if the manufacturing operation is more complicated, okay, that means you may have more activity cost pools, right? In terms of dealing with this activity overhead allocation, okay? Okay, does this make sense? Nice, yeah, that's the whole purpose of, I sent that 2 videos ahead of time. So I'm hoping that by watching that 2 videos, you get some ideas, okay? So you can see that, this is a much better way of allocating the overhead cost instead of, putting everything as one big number, right? One big number divided by direct labor hours, direct labor cost. Now you separate that big number into 3 cost pools, right? So you have better control, better allocation. So let's get more realistic examples. Okay, so for step 1, so for example, you may order some materials, right? So I'm making a table. So I have to order, maybe lumbers or whatever, right? So I need to have somebody just working on this purchasing department, right? So there's going to be a lot of cost related to the purchasing, okay? So I'm going to make the purchasing as a cost activity pool, okay? Step 2, I want to identify what's the cost driver. What is that activity that's driving all the cost for this activity pool? So the idea is the number of purchase order, okay? The number of purchase order. So basically the idea is the more orders we are purchasing, the cost will be higher for this department, right? And number 3, so basically I use the total cost divided by the number of estimated purchase order. So I figured out what's the cost per purchase order. And then step 4, multiplication. I'm going to say, for this job, right, I'm making a table. So let's say, I used 2 purchase orders, right? So then whatever the rate you figured out times 2, that's how you allocate the cost to the table. And let's say the chair need 1 purchase order, right? So then, you just allocate 1, right, to the chair. Let's take a look. I believe there are some questions here. Just give me 1 second. Megan?
I'm curious, like what kind of costs would go into a purchasing cost pool? Would that be like the salary of a person that works in purchasing? Is that kind of like what we're looking at?
Yeah, maybe they have an office, right? Maybe they have an office building, that's where they are working. The depreciation of the office, right?
Okay.
That would be also part of the cost.
Cool.
Maybe they have a supervisor, right? Even though the supervisors are not a person directly making the purchase orders, and they are also part of the team.
So it still is kind of like, it's what we learned overhead was, it's just more specifically broken out into different categories.
Exactly, right? So we are not changing anything about what we have learned previously. It's really, how can we do a better job allocating this overhead? That's the whole ABC is dealing about. We are not changing anything we have learned before. It just gave us a different way to allocate overhead cost.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Anybody else have questions? Okay, so I will keep going. So and then another activity cost pool would be storage. So when after you have the raw materials in, you have some storage cost. Okay, so then what's the cost driver? Well, the number of square meters of the storage space. Okay, the more space, the more square meters, the cost will be higher, right? And then you figured out what's the cost per square meter. Okay, and then you were saying, okay, all the materials used to make this table, and they take up, let's say, 100 square meters in the warehouse, right? So then you just apply 100 times this cost per square meters to this table, right? So then machinings, right? Machinings. So here, this is a cost. You're going to use a machine, right, to do the manufacturing. So then the cost driver will be the number of the machine hours. Okay. So similar ideas, you figured out what's the cost per machine hour, and then you're going to allocate accordingly, depending on how long it take the table, right? How many machine hours does it take to do the table versus do the chair, right? And the last piece is you have the factory supervision. How many employees this person is supervised, right? How many employees this person is supervised? What's the cost per employees, right? And then maybe 3 people working on this table. So then you just use this standard rate times 3. Maybe 2 people working on the chair. Then you use the same rate times 2, right? Okay, so that's kind of the idea, the 4 steps, right? The 4 steps.
Sorry,
So
I have a question.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Why wouldn't the factory supervisor cost be under purchase order? Like I thought that we were putting that. Oh no, wait, never mind. I answered my own question in my own head. Never mind.
Okay, good. Yeah, sometimes it's interesting, right? When you start asking questions, you start processing, then you get the answer yourself. So that's good. Okay, so this is just conceptually, I'm showing you the 4 step. In the future slides, I'm going to walk with you through one example. You're going to see the numbers, okay? I know you guys like the numbers, so we are going to use a real example. We'll see the numbers. But conceptually, this is the 4 steps, right? This is the 4 steps. Okay, now I'm going to ask a question, okay? And please raise your hand and I will call by name, okay? As the complexity of products manufacturing or operation increases, the number of activities and the cost driver used in an activity cost system will likely, okay, let's see my order of the hands. So Reg?
It's A, increase.
A, increase. Michaela?
Also was going to say A, increase.
Karen?
I would say they increase.
Okay. Isabella?
Increase.
Jimmy?
Increase as well.
Kate?
Increase.
Oh, wow, this list is very long. So many people raised the hand. Okay, so James?
Increase.
Okay. So I guess I have to agree with you because you guys all agree with each other, right? So I have to agree with you. So this increase, okay? It's increase. Okay, okay, let's move on. So when you compare the 2 costings, traditional costing versus ABC, so just like Megan was asking the question, so ABC doesn't replacing the existing job order costing system. We are not doing anything fundamentally different, right? So, so basically what we are doing is we are separating that big number, the overhead, okay, into different cost activity pools, okay? So before you have a big, what would be a good reason? Okay, what would be a good example? Just give me a second. Let me think. So so you have a total amount of overhead cost.
Lấy cái bộ hypothetical khởi sự.
So that you have a big number, right? You have big number. Traditionally, you just use this big number divided by the total amount of direct labors hours, right? But for ABC, okay, you start cutting this pie, this big pie, right? You think about the total cost, overhead cost like a big pie, right? So instead of figuring out only one overhead rate, you are going to cut them into different pieces, right? So this is how you separate this overhead cost into different cost activity pools, okay? So in the examples I gave you in my video, there are 3 cost pools, right? Massage, play golf, and cheering, right? So instead of having one big number, I'm dealing with this number, okay, and figure out one predetermined overhead rate. Now I am segregate this overhead cost into different cost pools. So by doing that, I will have better cost information, okay? And I'm going to show you why is like that, okay? Okay, so now I have a question for you, okay? I have a question for you. So okay, so maybe I don't have a question for you. Where's my question? Maybe it's in another slide. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I do have a question, but not on this slide. So the ABC, okay, this ABC system, it just improves how the overhead is allocated. Okay, it does not change anything on the traditional cost system. Okay, and the only real difference is about how the overhead costs are allocated. Okay, where is my question? Okay, so let me ask you. Okay, I remember my question. Okay, let me ask you. Do you think is there any changes to the direct materials and direct labor under the 2 different systems? Let's see. Kaylee?
No.
Tammy?
No.
Dan?
I'd agree with no, but I was thinking something a little off topic, off topic, but about this. If you identified something like, for example, you're doing maintenance and adding oil to machines, and that became something you did every 1,000 units you produced, wouldn't that move a maintenance overhead cost to production cost?
So you are saying about applying the lubricants to the machines, maintenance?
Yeah, like, so you're doing a maintenance, but what if you did routine maintenance? So it's every 1,000 units you produce.
I think
So
we
then
mentioned,
would it become a product cost?
We have done those kind of questions. We are saying those are the overhead costs, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are the overhead costs, right? You know, it's related to the machine, right? And the machine is the part of the production, right? So we know it's related. We know that maintenance cost is a product cost, but it's not direct material. It's not direct labor, and therefore that has to be a manufacturing overhead, right?
Okay.
Is that your question, Dan?
Yeah, that is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. So my second question is, okay, is there any changes to the total overhead cost under the 2 systems? So if I called your name already, I will not call your name again. So Kate. Kate Wu. Ashley?
I would say there is definitely a difference. That's about how you get over and under applied.
Okay, so maybe I will just be more clear. My question is there any change to the total overhead cost under the two system? The total overhead cost. Nima?
I was gonna say no, since the only change is that we're allocating it to different activity. That's what changes, but the total should remain the same.
Yeah, so the total remains the same. It's just how we allocate it, right? Okay, the total is just the difference is just how we allocate the overhead cost. Okay, very good. Okay, so here is one example. So we're gonna see some numbers. So we want to contrast traditional versus ABC. Okay, we are going to use one example. So suppose a company produce two types of exercise equipment, a bench and a coaster. Okay, so the bench, the production units is 25,000. The coaster is 5,000. So we are expecting that each product requires 1 hour of direct labor. Okay, so how many units we have every year? We have 25 plus 5,000. In total, there are 30,000 units. And each unit is going to require 1 hour of direct labor. So in total, we are going to need, okay, 30,000 direct labor hours. So we assume that the annual manufacturing overhead cost is $900,000 cost, and divided by the 30,000 direct labor hour. So the overhead cost per direct labor hour is $30 per direct labor hour. Okay. So now let's take a look at the cost. Okay, the cost for the bench. Okay, so per unit we have direct materials 40, direct labor 12, and 1 unit direct labor $30 here. Okay, so in total the cost would be 40, 12, 30, so 82. That's the total cost per bench. So similar idea, we are using the ECC information. We added up to be $72 per coaster. So I want you to remember these two numbers: 82 for bench, 72 for coaster. This is under the traditional costing system. Okay, so you might be curious, okay, what is the unit cost for the two products under the ABC costing system? Okay, so we have to figure it out. We have to calculate it. Okay, so okay, so we are okay with time. These are the questions I just asked you about. Okay, step 1, right? Remember that first step, and I promise you that I'm going to give you some numbers, okay? And we are going to use the numbers. So suppose the total overhead cost is 900,000. So the total amount of overhead cost is 900,000, right? And under the traditional way, we use this number divided by the 300,000, right? And we figured out that one rate, predetermined overhead rate, is $30 per direct labor hour, right? So under ABC, I'm going to allocate this $900,000 first into different cost activity pools, okay? So I'm going to allocate a manufacturing activity. So that's 700,000, and machine setup activity 100,000, and purchase ordering 50,000, and factory maintenance, 50,000. Okay. So now see, I have a better idea, right? What is this $900,000 about? So I have more information now. Actually, 700,000 of that is related to manufacturing activities. 100,000 of that cost is related to setting up machines, and $50,000 is related to orderings, right? And the other $50,000 is related to maintenance, just like Dan was asking about maintenance, right? So now you have a better idea of what consists of that $900,000 total overhead cost. And
Sorry, I just have a quick question.
yeah, go ahead.
How did you pick the 900? So like, I get how you divide it and how it makes
Oh, the
better sense.
900?
And yeah.
Oh, here.
So
Here. So estimated, oops, sorry. Estimated annual manufacturing overhead cost 900,000.
So you did that through the traditional way, and then from the traditional, then you use the ABC?
Oh no, we are using the same number. We are just assume this number for this example.
Oh, okay. I was just
So this
wondering.
number is not calculated, right? This number is assumption. So in
Okay.
this example, we assume that the estimated annual manufacturing overhead is 900,000.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. So in this case, how many pools do we have? How many pools do we have?
4.
4, yeah.
4.
Okay, and then you know the cost, right, for each pool. So that's our step 1, right? That's our step 1. And step 2, okay, so we want to identify the cost driver and the estimated use, okay, of the activities. So manufacturing, the cost driver would be machine hours, okay? And we estimate 50,000 machine hours for the year, okay? That's how much machine hours we are going to incur, okay? For machine setups, the number of setup, right? And we estimate 2,000 setups for the year. Purchase orderings, what is that cost driver? Anyone? What's the cost driver for purchase ordering?
Number of orders?
Number of orders. Exactly. So we are expecting 2,500 purchase orders. Okay. Factory maintenance. So this one, what is the cost driver? Area square meters. Okay. Factory maintenance is how big is that factory? Okay. The square meters of the area for maintenance. So suppose that is 25,000. Okay, 25,000. So that's the step 2. Okay, step 2. Step 3. Okay, so in step 1, you have the cost information. You know the dollar amount. In step 2, you learned about estimated usage level. Here, you know these numbers. So now you use step 2. These are the step 1 number. These are the step 2 number. And this is the step 3. You tell me, how do we do the calculation? What is for step 3?
You divide the estimated overhead by the estimated use of cost drivers per activity.
$14.
Yeah, so division, right? Remember, step 3 is the division, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you do division, you think about the 700,000 divided by 50,000. So what is
$14?
$14 per machine hour. So you're going to do the same thing for each activity. 100 divided by 2,000, 50. 50,000 divided by 2,500, 20. 50 divided by 25,000, $2, right? So you figured out this predetermined overhead rate for each activity, right? So this is my step 3. Step 4, anyone remember which one we are going to use for step 4? So I'm only pick the students I haven't asked yet.
We
If
are
you already
providing-
answered the question, I will not call name. I'm going to call whoever haven't answered the question yet. So for step 3 is a division. What about step 4? I'm just looking for somebody who hasn't participated yet. So all the people with hands up, you guys have already participated. Okay, so nobody answer. So then, oh, okay, I found one. Okay, Patricia? Patricia?
Sorry, it would be the result that you multiply
Yeah.
for the amount that the results for the amount that you have in the next step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. So the key word I want to hear is the multiplication, right? So if you say multiply, I know you got it. Yeah. So so basically, you know the reads, right? Then you just applied that read using the actual usage. That would be the amount allocated, right? So in this case, for example, we expected there are 50,000 machine hours, right? So actually, the bench is going to need 30,000 machine hours. The remaining 20,000 will be used by the coaster, right? So so then when I do this calculation, here's the bench, here's the coaster. So I know the bench is going to need $30,000 machine hours, right? And we know each machine hours costs $14. So therefore, I'm going to allocate 420,000 to the bench, okay? And 280,000 to the coaster, okay? So together, 420 plus 280, that is my total 700, okay? You see how this 700 manufacturing overhead for this activity is allocated between the two products. Similar idea, these are the usage of the cost driver. And you multiply it by the rate we figured out in step 3. And so then you add up all this allocation. So you realize, oh, the total cost assigned is 480,000 for the bench, and also 480 for the coaster. This is by accident, right? Because all these other numbers, these 4 numbers, all different, but amazingly, when they add up, they are the same, okay? And then you figured out what's the units number, so divided by 25,000 units, for the coaster divided by 5,000 units. So how much for the bench? 19.2. How much for the coaster? 884. Do you remember the numbers we figured out under the traditional costing?
8272.
8272. Wow. Wow, that's right. Here we learned, okay, 8272, that's under traditional costing. Okay, under ABC, the direct materials, direct labor will not change, right? Direct material, direct labor are the same under both costing system, and the overhead will be different, right? So we have 19.2, 84 here. So ABC add up to be 7120 for the bench and 126 for the coaster, okay? So for the bench, we overstated $10.80. For the coaster, we underestimated $54. Did you see? So clearly,
Professor, could I ask a question, please?
yes.
Is the reason why we use the this ABC? Is it because we want to be able to tell the actual overhead cost of each product rather than use a predetermined rate?
We always use a predetermined rate, right? The question is, how many rates are you using? So basically, under traditional costing, we only use one rate. Under ABC, we can use many different rates, right? Depending on the number of the activity. So for, in this case, there are 4 pools, right? There are 4 pools. So for each pool, we have one rate. So under ABC in this question, we have 4 rates, right?
Okay.
And for under traditional costing, there's always only one rate. But we are saying that when we have 4 rates, right, we are able to provide more accurate
Accuracy.
product costing information. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. No problem. And it's quite big. It's huge, right? Because under traditional, you think the cost is 72, and you think, oh, guess what? I will be happy to sell it for $90, so I can make like 18 bucks, right? You'll be happy. But under ABC, you know that you have to sell it more than 126 to not lose money, right? And for the bench, right, you think, oh boy, this costs 82. I need to sell it for 90. But actually, even you sell it for 80, you are still making some money, right? So it's really important that you know your cost, right? And it's really important that your cost information is accurate, because otherwise, how the managers is going to make all these decisions, right? Right? Let's, for example, in this case, if the market price for the bench is $90, $80. Suppose the market price for the bench is $80, right? And then I see the traditional costing report. Boy, it cost me $82 to make it, and I can only sell it for $80. I'm so dumb, right? Why I'm making this? So let's just stop this production line, right? So guess what? This is the profitable one, right? You are making some money on that. You can still sell it. Sometimes if you think you only have one rate, right? It's really like for anything, right? If you only have one rate, you know, it's kind of a very coarse estimation, right? Approximation. If you only have one rate, right? So I was wondering, like, you know, in our class we have 55 students, right? So if you want to pick anything that may be relevant to us, if you only take, you think about what would be the one thing, right? It's really relevant to us, and you know, all these variations among the students can be explained by this one thing, right? One rate. It will be really challenged, right? But if you provide more dimensions, right? If you provide more dimensions, then that could be better explained, right? So for example, if you are saying, I'm trying to understand students' academic performance, right? Academic performance, right? Your GPA, whatever. And then you are saying, guess what? I'm only going to use one thing, right? I'm going to use your effort level, okay? How much hours you spend to the course, right? Do you think that would be an accurate prediction, right? In terms of the academic performance versus that effort? Is that effort is a good driver to your GPA performance, right? So if you only use that one factor, it's probably very biased, right? It's not a very accurate prediction, right? So for example, some people maybe they are smarter, okay? I don't believe that. I still think effort is the key. But, you know, let's say maybe his father is an accounting professor, right? He can always ask at any time he have access to experts, right? To ask for questions. That therefore his accounting courses, he got a very good point, right? So even though he didn't make too much effort, okay, but he has a father as a accounting professor, right? So the whole point I'm trying to say is you're going to use more factors, more dimensions, and try to explain that one thing, right? So here we are trying to use different dimensions to explain that overhead cost, okay? And the more dimensions you have, it's supposed to be more accurate. That's the whole point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sorry, Professor, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Does having more cost drivers always necessary? Like at what point would having like 100 cost drivers become obsolete, right?
You are saying that cost drivers might be obsolete?
Yeah, if you have too many of them, or
depending.
there's no limit.
Yeah, it's really depending on the how complicated that operation is. If you have too many, then the downside would be it's going to take a lot of effort, right? Resources to do all these calculations to figure it out. Because first of all, you have to allocate overhead costs into 100 pools, right? Right, and you keep track of all the costs properly, and then you identify the level. With computer, you know, it's not something unachievable, but it's definitely at a cost, right? So again, the company has to evaluate the cost and the benefit, right? You know, if they can only use 3, they are happy with the level of the precision of the information, then they will just use 3, right? You know, the more you add, it's gonna cost you more to manage that process, right? So to answer your question, 100 probably not considered as a large amount of activity pools, right? You think about Amazon, you know, the big corporations, right? Trillions of dollars, right? Worth companies. They have so many different activities. Yeah.
So it's up to the discretion of the manager per se?
Yeah, yes. So, and then this would be, you know, sometimes companies will hire consultants to help them to set up this kind of analysis, right? So if the company managers doesn't have enough knowledge, they probably will use consultants to help them to figure out what are the cost drivers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, Professor, just to write on her question.
Yeah.
So essentially, what is it? Does it mean that if we don't get the right cost driver, then our cost analysis will be wrong? Is that correct?
So I don't want to use right or wrong. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Because basically you can never get. So there is no standard of what is right, what is wrong. You know your goal, right? Your goal is to allocate this overhead cost to products, right? So it doesn't matter which method you are using, you are actually able to accomplish this goal because eventually the total overhead cost will be allocated to the different products, right? The question is that accurate, right?
Okay.
So we can only say that using this system will provide more accurate cost information.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we are trying to say here is that ABC, in terms of allocating overhead cost, ABC is doing a better job, right? Than the traditional costing, right? It's just because it allows more dimension, right? It allows different cost pools, right?
Okay.
So instead of assuming everyone use all these resources evenly, right? We are actually be able to keep track of how much resources each product
uses
using from the activity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's suppose that, you know, we go to public buildings, right? There are different pools, different colors, right? Traditional costing would be assumed that for every visit, everybody is using evenly, right? Everyone is like dived into the different pool, right? Having some fun, right? But ABC is saying that, guess what? I'm going to keep track of, each product.
Person
Right?
stuff.
Yeah, I want to keep track of the product. Is this product jumped into that blue pool, right? And if it's in the blue pool, how long these people stay there, right? Or maybe these people is jumped into all pools, right? Maybe he has to bear more cost, right? Versus that guy, right? Only dipped a little bit.
Yeah, is fit. Yeah,
into the pool
yeah,
and then left.
yeah.
Right? So
does it also help us determine which products is doing well based
so
off of the cost?
when you have better cost information, you definitely can make better decision, right? Just like I said, if you have faith in your cost number, then you can say, oh, I'm making money, I'm losing money, right?
Sure.
I should actually stop this product because I'm losing money, right? But if that cost number you have no faith, you will not be able to say that. So you have to make sure that you have a relatively accurate cost information, and then you can make some decisions, right?
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I like that example, the pools example. I think that makes more sense, right? Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes, absolutely, it does.
Yeah. Okay. So you can see that, chapter 5. So chapter 3, job order costing is the foundation. Chapter 5, we are kind of learning a better way to allocate the overhead cost. Okay. Okay, now, oops, how come you see the answer for this one? Okay, that's too bad.
The answer is B.
Oh, just give me a second. Okay, I have to stop share. Okay, and I need to fix this. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Okay. So I hope you didn't see the answer. Okay, I assume you didn't see the answer. Okay, so let me share the screen again. Okay, so which of the following is not one of the 4 steps involved in calculating units cost under ABC costing? Because you probably see the answer, but I will ask the question differently, right? If for A, C, D, you tell me which step is that, okay? So the answer is B. B is not the 4th step. So A, C, D is one of the 4 steps. So you tell me which step it is, right? So please, for those of you who haven't answered the question, I'm giving you opportunity to participate, okay? So for A, assigning manufacturing cost for each cost pool to products using the overhead rate. You tell me which step is this, okay? For those of you who haven't participated, just give me, Mario, you have participated already, right? Okay, Long? Which step?
I think it's the C is the 4th step, and A is 2nd one, and B
only
is the
one.
5th one.
Only one.
Oh, only one.
So for A, assigning manufacturing overhead cost
it's A.
for each cost pool to products using overhead rate. Which step is this? There are 4 steps. Which one?
It's the last one.
Step 4. Okay, good. Okay, let's take a look at C. Identify and classify the major activities involved in the manufacture of specific products and allocate the manufacturing overhead to the appropriate cost pools. Thomas?
That's step 1.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Last one, calculate the overhead rate per cost driver. Ruben?
Step 3.
Step 3. Yeah.
Good.
Maddie?
Oh, step 2, I mean.
I was going to say step 3 as well.
Okay. Yeah, step 3 is good. Yeah, that's step 3. Okay, so Now you guys do this question, okay? Do this question. I will give you like 5 minutes to do this question. If you need 5 minutes. And Ruben, you have a legacy hand. So again, for those of you who have already answered the questions, I'm trying to give people opportunity to participate. If you haven't participated yet, please raise your hand. If you have the answer already. So I have 2 hands, Ruben and Reg. You guys have participated already. So I'm just trying to give the other people a chance. Janaya.
Is it A?
A, okay. Florence.
I got A as well.
A. Okay, Tammy, Patricia. Okay, so everyone has, yeah, for those, yeah, so Tammy, Patricia, you have participated already?
A.
Yeah, A, yeah. Okay, so A is correct. Okay, so this is the basically step 3 calculation, right? So cost divided by the estimate level. So 60,000 divided by 300, that's 200. 320,000 divided by 5,000, 64. 40,000 divided by 8,000, 5. Okay. Okay, so we finished the first 2. Okay, so I'm going to just give me 1 second, stop the recording.